What happens when the school bully picks on a quiet girl only to discover she's the adopted daughter of a Hollywood superstar? This is a true story about courage, change, and the power of standing up for yourself. Amara was used to change. Ever since she was a little girl, life had moved her from one place to another. But this time, the change felt different. The large iron gates of the prestigious high school in Los Angeles looked more intimidating than welcoming. She adjusted the straps of her backpack and took a deep breath before walking in. She was nervous, but she didn't show it. Her face stayed calm, her steps steady, her back straight. She had learned from her father how to carry herself with quiet strength. Inside the building, students filled the hallways. Laughter, chatter, and footsteps echoed around her. Some students glanced at Amara as she passed, curious about the new girl with calm eyes and flawless dark skin. She didn't wear flashy clothes or loud makeup. Her style was simple jeans, sneakers, and a clean white hoodie. She didn't try to stand out, and that made some students even more interested. What no one knew was that Amara had a secret. A secret that could easily change how everyone saw her. But she didn't want that. She didn't want people to treat her differently or look at her with awe. She wanted to make friends who liked her for who she was, not for who raised her. So, she told no one that she was the adopted daughter of Vin Diesel the Hollywood action star known all over the world. Amara had been adopted when she was only 5 years old. Her biological parents had died in a tragic car accident, and she was left in foster care. Vin Diesel and his longtime partner had met her during a charity visit to the orphanage. While everyone saw a quiet little girl sitting alone in the corner, Vin saw something else. He saw strength, saw fire in her eyes. And without hesitation, he decided to take her home. Years passed, and Amara grew up in a warm, loving home. Vin treated her like his own flesh and blood. He taught her to be kind, to be fearless, and to believe in herself. He also taught her never to show off or let fame change her. That's why Amara never boasted about who her father was, even though he was one of the biggest stars in the world. Her first day at the new school went by quietly. Most teachers were impressed by her polite behavior and the thoughtful way she answered questions. She was smart, but didn't try to show it off. She was kind, but didn't let anyone walk over her. Still, something about her silence bothered a few students, especially Madison. Madison was the queen bee of the school. She was blonde, rich, and always dressed like she was walking a red carpet. Her parents donated a lot of money to the school, so the teachers treated her gently even. When she was rude, Madison didn't like things she couldn't control, and Amara was one of those things. The new girl didn't laugh at her jokes, didn't try to join her group, and didn't seem scared of her. That made Madison uncomfortable on the second day of school. Amara was sitting alone under a tree during lunch, eating quietly and reading a book. Madison walked past with her group of followers, pretending not to notice her. But then she stopped, turned around, and walked toward her. "Hey," Madison said, standing over her. "You lost or something?" Amara looked up calmly. "No, just reading." Madison raised an eyebrow. "Don't you want to make some friends?" "Okay, thanks," Amara replied politely and went back to her book. That tiny moment, just a quiet refusal, was enough to make Madison feel insulted. She walked away, but whispered something to her friends, and they all laughed loudly. Amara didn't react. She had dealt with people like Madison before. Over the next few days, Madison's actions became more direct. She started making jokes. In the hallway where Amara could hear, jokes about her clothes, her sad little lunches, her boring face, and even her skin. At first, Amara ignored it. She remembered what her dad always told her: you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Let your actions speak louder than your anger. So, she stayed quiet. But the bullying didn't stop. It got worse. Madison pushed Amara's books off her desk one day in class. She pretended it was an accident, but everyone saw it. The teacher didn't say much, probably scared of Madison's rich parents. During gym class, Madison threw a ball at her face and laughed when it hit her. Amara wiped the tears from her eyes but didn't cry. She picked up the ball and threw it back with perfect aim. The students started whispering about Amara. Some felt bad for her but didn't want to go against Madison. Others were just curious. Who was this girl who didn't fight back but also didn't break down? Why wasn't she scared? Amara's only real friend during this time was Leo, a quiet boy who loved drawing and stayed away from drama. He had noticed Amara on the first day and admired her calmness. Slowly, they started talking about books, music, and life. Amara never mentioned her father, but Leo could tell she was different. Not just in looks or words, but in the way she carried herself. Like someone who had faced storms before and learned how to walk through them. One day, Leo asked her, "Why don't you ever fight back?" Amara smiled. "Because sometimes silence says more than shouting ever could." Leo nodded, but he still didn't understand everything. That week, the school had a talent show coming up. Students were allowed to perform anything they wanted. Madison, of course, signed up to do a dance routine with her friends. Leo asked Amara if she wanted to participate, but she shook her head. "I'm not here to impress anyone." Still, the bullying continued. Madison pushed the line more every day. And Amara still didn't tell anyone who her father was. Or not the teachers, not the students, not even Leo. She didn't want to be known as the famous kid. She wanted to be known as herself. One afternoon, as Amara walked home, she felt tired. Not physically, but emotionally. It's a constant whispering, the cruel jokes, the feeling of being watched. It was all starting to weigh on her. She wanted to tell her father, but part of her also wanted to prove that she could handle this on her own. That night, she looked at an old photo on her bedroom wall. It was her and Vin Diesel sitting on the beach, building sandcastles. She was smiling, and so was he. Under the photo, he had written in marker, "You're stronger than any storm, kiddo," Amara whispered to the picture. "I'm trying, Dad." And she was. She really was, but deep down she knew the storm wasn't over yet. What she didn't know was that, very soon, everything would change. The truth about who she really was, the daughter of one of the most respected stars in the world, was going to come out. And when it did, the same people who looked down on her would suddenly look up. But for now, she remained silent. Calm, strong, a storm waiting to rise, and Madison had no idea what was coming. Every day at school felt heavier for Amara. She had hoped things might settle down after the first week. But instead, the bullying from Madison only got worse. The laughter behind her back grew louder, and the looks from her classmates became colder. It was as if Madison's words had painted a false picture of her. And everyone chose to believe it, instead of seeing who she really was. At first, the teasing had just been silly comments and cold glares. Madison would pass by Amara's desk and whisper loud enough for others to hear, "Did you get that hoodie from a trash bin?" Or, "Why does she always eat alone? Even flies don't want her lunch." Her group would giggle loudly, enjoying the show. Amara never responded. She kept her face straight, even when her hands were shaking. She focused on her notebook, pretending nothing had happened, but inside, it hurt. One day, during science class, the bullying crossed another line. Amara was working on a group project with 3 other girls. Madison wasn't in her group, but she was in the same classroom. As Amara explained a part of the experiment, one of Madison's followers mimicked, her voice adding a sarcastic tone that made the others laugh. Amara's group didn't laugh, but they didn't defend her either. They just looked away and continued working like nothing had happened. That kind of silence stung the most. Madison wasn't just being mean, she was strategic. She knew how to insult Amara in front of just enough people without getting caught by teachers. She would roll her eyes whenever Amara walked past, trip her on purpose, or block her locker just to annoy her. There were days when Amara considered speaking up, but something inside her stopped her. Maybe it was her pride, maybe it was fear, or maybe it was her father's voice echoing in her mind. Don't give bullies the reaction they're looking for. But things were beginning to get harder to ignore. During one lunch break, Amara went to the cafeteria and found her usual spot in the corner. She placed her lunchbox on the table, opened it quietly, and took out a sandwich. Before she could take a bite, Madison walked by with her group and stopped. She looked at Amara's lunch and said, "Wow, what is that? A prison meal?" Her friends laughed loudly. Madison then took out her phone, snapped a photo of Amara's lunch without asking, and posted it online with a cruel caption. Amara heard someone giggling behind her as they looked at their phone. She knew the photo was already spreading. She didn't touch her sandwich after that. She packed everything back into the box and left the cafeteria, her stomach empty, but her heart even more so. That day she cried in the bathroom for the first time since joining the school. She didn't sob loudly. She didn't scream. She just let silent tears fall as she sat in a locked stall, hugging her knees. She felt alone, and for the first time she questioned whether staying silent was the right thing to do. After school, she walked home with her hoodie pulled over her head. Leo saw her from across the street and called out her name. She looked up and forced a small smile. He crossed the road to walk beside her. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked gently. "I'm fine," she replied quietly. "No, you're not. I saw what happened at lunch. Madison's being evil. Why don't you report her?" Amara sighed. "Because no one will care. She has rich parents. They'll just call it kids being kids. But it's not just a joke anymore," Leo said. "She's making you miserable." Amara paused. Then she looked at him and asked, "Have you ever had to fight to be invisible?" Leo didn't know how to respond. He just looked down and walked beside her in silence. Amara appreciated that he didn't push. Sometimes she just needed someone to listen. Later that night, Amara sat on her bed and stared at her phone. Opened her photo gallery and scrolled through pictures of her and her dad. There were silly selfies from movie sets, birthday party pictures, and quiet moments at home. In one photo, Vin Diesel was braiding her hair while wearing a superhero costume, making a funny face. Amara smiled softly. That was her real world. A world of love, protection, and strength. But school felt like a different world altogether. A world where kindness made you a target and silence was seen as weakness. The next day, things reached another level. Amara was walking down the hallway toward her locker when she saw something unusual. A crowd had gathered. At first, she thought it was just students hanging out. But then, she saw the posters. Someone had printed out photos of her eating lunch and edited them with cruel words like trash queen. Too poor to eat real food, and mouth closed for a reason. They were taped all over her locker. The laughter was deafening. Amara froze. Her eyes scanned the cruel images. She didn't know who exactly had done it, but she didn't need to. Madison stood nearby, arms crossed, watching her reaction. There was a tiny smirk on her lips, as if she were proud of her work. Amara stood there, staring at the posters, her face unreadable. Her heart raced. She wanted to tear everything down, scream, run away. But she didn't move. She just stood there until a teacher finally saw what was happening. The teacher rushed over, tore the posters down, and shouted, "Who did this?" No one answered. Madison stepped forward and said sweetly, "I just got here. Didn't see." "Who put them up?" The teacher looked around, saw that no one was talking, and then turned to Amara. "Are you okay?" Amara nodded silently. "Come with me to the office," the teacher said. In the principal's office, Amara sat quietly while the staff asked her questions. She told them she didn't know who had done it. She didn't name names. She wasn't. Protecting Madison Shea just didn't want to speak until she was ready. That evening, back at home, Amara was unusually quiet. She didn't talk much during dinner, and Vin Diesel noticed. He looked at her for a while, then said, "You know, I might play a tough guy in movies, but in real life, I'm also your dad. And I'm here whenever you're ready." Amara looked at him, tears welling in her eyes, and whispered, "They hate me." Vin walked over, hugged her tightly, and said, "Then they don't know who you are." She cried in his arms for a long time. The next morning, she didn't want to go to school. She told her dad she felt sick. He didn't force her, but he knew the truth. He sat down next to her and said, "You don't have to tell me everything, but I want you to remember something. Your silence isn't weakness, but don't be afraid to use your voice when it matters." Amara nodded. She thought about his words all day. She returned to school the next day. Madison looked surprised to see her. Maybe she had expected Amara to quit, to run away. But Amara walked in with her head held high, wearing the same hoodie and jeans she always wore, She didn't speak much, but something had changed in her eyes. They weren't just calm now, they were strong. Leo walked beside her and whispered, "You okay?" Amara replied softly, "Not yet, but I will be." That week, she began writing everything down, every moment, every insult, every cruel joke. She started building her courage slowly and quietly. She wasn't ready to tell the world yet. She was getting ready. The bullying hadn't stopped, but Amara had. She had stopped letting it define her. Her silence wasn't fear anymore. It was preparation. She knew a time would come when she would speak not just to her school, but to everyone. And when she did, the truth would change everything. Amara's days at school continued like a slow-burning storm. The laughter behind her back never stopped. The whispers in the hallway always seemed to carry her name. And even though she never cried at school again, her heart still ached from everything she had to face every single day. But deep inside her, something had started to shift. She was no longer just the quiet girl trying to ignore the bullies. She was slowly turning into something stronger, a version of herself who would not remain silent forever. She kept a small notebook hidden in her bag. In it, she wrote everything that happened, every cruel word, every fake smile, every time Madison or her friends tried to humiliate her. She didn't write it with anger. She wrote it with purpose. Her father had once told her that silence can be powerful, but when the right time comes, words can change everything. So, she was saving hers for that right moment. Madison, on the other hand, believed she had one. She thought Amara was too weak, too shy, too scared to ever fight back.
Madison
became more fearless, walking around the school like she owned it, tossing cruel jokes like candy and laughing as others followed her. She didn't know that every move she made was being watched and remembered. Amara didn't stop attending school. In fact, she walked into the building with more confidence than before. Not loud or proud, just steady. She didn't hide her face anymore. She looked people in the eye. Some students noticed the difference. Leo definitely did. One afternoon, Leo and Amara sat under their usual tree in the schoolyard. It was the only place where she felt safe enough to talk freely. "You've changed," Leo said, sketching something in his notebook. "Maybe," Amara said, "or maybe I've just remembered who I am." Leo looked at her, curious. "What? Do you mean?" Amara hesitated. Then, for the first time, she whispered something she had never told anyone at school. "My father is Vin Diesel." Leo blinked, confused. "Wait, the Vin Diesel actor?" Amara nodded slowly. He stared at her for a long time. "Are you serious?" She smiled gently. "Yes. He adopted me when I was 5. Leo looked stunned. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "'Cause I wanted to be known for who I am, not who raised me." Leo nodded, understanding. "That's actually really brave." Amara gave a small laugh. "You're the first person I've told, please don't tell anyone else yet." "I won't," Leo promised. That conversation changed something between them. Leo now understood why Amara had such strength in silence. She wasn't just any ordinary girl. She had grown up watching one of the strongest men in the world face cameras, crowds, and criticism without ever losing his dignity. That strength had shaped her, even though she tried to hide it. A week later, something happened that Amara would never forget. It was a Friday morning. The school had organized an assembly for Student Excellence Week. Madison, of course, was one of the speakers. She walked on stage in a glittery dress, smiling proudly, talking about school spirit, kindness, and leadership, words that sounded fake coming from her lips. Amara sat quietly in the back row, listening. After Madison spoke, the principal asked if anyone else wanted to say a few words. Most students stayed silent. But then, Leo nudged Amara's arm and whispered, "Do it." Amara's heart pounded. She shook her head at first. But then something inside her clicked. She stood up. The room turned silent. No one expected her to say anything, let alone walk up to the stage. She walked slowly, calmly, her eyes focused ahead. She took the microphone with steady hands and looked at the sea of students in front of her. "I wasn't planning to speak today," she began, her voice clear. "But I think it's time I stopped being silent." The room was so quiet you could hear the soft hum of the lights. Many of you don't know me. I'm the girl who sits in the back, the one who eats lunch alone, the one people laugh at, one who's been called names, who's had her locker covered with posters, who's been made to feel like she doesn't belong here. Whispers spread across the room. People began to shift in their seats. I've never said anything because I thought staying silent was the strong thing to do. But silence also means the bad people win, and I'm tired of letting them win. She paused, looked directly at Madison, and continued, "There's someone in this school who has gone out of her way to make me feel small, who thinks cruelty makes her powerful, who teaches others to laugh instead of help. But what she doesn't know is that I've been raised to never fear anyone like her." Madison's face turned red. She crossed her arms and looked away, pretending not to care. But she was rattled. "I didn't want people to know who my father is," Amara said, "because I wanted to be known for who I am. But maybe it's time I stop hiding." She took a deep breath. "My name's Amara, and my father is Vin Diesel?" "Yes, that Vin Diesel. The one who drives fast cars and jumps off buildings in movies, but at home he's just my dad. He taught me to walk with dignity, to speak with truth, and to never let bullies decide my worth." The room exploded into whispers and gasps. Some students looked shocked, others looked impressed. No one laughed anymore. "I'm not telling you this to show off," she added. "I'm telling you this so you understand that kindness has nothing to do with money or fame. It comes from strength. And you don't need to be a celebrity to stand up for yourself." She looked around the room one last time. "And if you've ever felt small, unwanted, or invisible, please know you're not alone. You matter. And your voice deserves to be heard." She ended her speech, handed the microphone back, and walked off stage. For a moment, the entire room stayed silent. Then, slowly, students began to clap. It started small, but it grew louder. Even some of Madison's friends joined in. Leo stood up and clapped the hardest. Madison didn't clap. Later that day, students started approaching Amara in the hallway. Some apologized. Others praised her for her bravery. A few shared their own stories of being bullied. One girl said, "Thank you. I've been scared to speak up too." Leo walked beside her with pride. "You did it," he whispered. "I just told the truth," Amara replied. But Madison wasn't finished. She was humiliated, and she hated that the attention had shifted to Amara. The next day, she tried to spread rumors again, saying Amara had lied about her father, that she was just pretending to be someone important to get attention. But this time, it didn't work. Amara had already shown her strength, and students believed her. In fact, one of the teachers had even confirmed it, saying he had seen Amara once with Vin Diesel outside the school when he came to pick her up quietly in a black SUV with her lies crumbling. Madison started losing her power. People no longer laughed at her jokes. Her friends didn't follow her as eagerly. Some even apologized to Amara and began sitting with her at lunch. She wasn't invisible anymore. Amara didn't try to become popular. She didn't change her clothes or act differently. She just remained the same calm, strong girl, but now people could finally see her. And in all of this, she didn't let revenge guide her. She didn't bully Madison back. Just walked taller, talked freely, and smiled more. One afternoon, as she sat with Leo under their tree, he asked her, "What made you finally speak up?" Amara looked at the sky and said, "Because I realized staying silent wouldn't protect me, but speaking up might protect someone else." Leo smiled. "You're kinda awesome, you know that?" Amara laughed. "Took you long enough to notice." From that day on, Amara's life in school changed, not because people were afraid of her or her famous father, but because they had seen her truth and they respected it. The girl who had once been bullied, laughed at, and ignored had become a voice for the voiceless. And Madison, she faded into the background, not because she disappeared, but because people stopped listening. The quiet girl had spoken, and her words had changed everything. Amara's days at school started to feel very different after she gave her speech during the assembly. The same school that once felt cold and unkind slowly began to feel like a place where she belonged. The hallway that once echoed with cruel laughter now carried small smiles and respectful nods. Many students who had ignored her or even joined in the bullying before now came up to her just to say hello. It felt strange at first, but it also felt good. It's not because she wanted attention, but because people were finally seeing her for who she really was. But even though things were better, they were not perfect. Madison was still there. She didn't stop trying to bring Amara down, but now her words didn't carry the same weight. Her jokes fell flat. Her cruel smiles didn't get the same laughs. The power she once held was slipping from her hands, and she knew it. Madison hated it, but she didn't know what else to do. She had built her confidence on making others feel small, and now no one was afraid of her anymore. Amara never acted proud or boastful. She remained quiet and kind. When students asked her questions about her dad, she answered politely, but never bragged. She didn't flash photos or show off his fame. In fact, most people were surprised at how humble she was. One boy even said, "You're not at all how I expected someone famous's daughter to be." Amara just smiled and said, "I'm just me." Leo remained her closest friend. He had stood by her from the beginning, even before he knew who her father was. They would still sit under the big tree during lunch, talking about books, music, and their dreams. He once told her, "You changed this school without shouting, without fighting. You just told the truth." One day, as they sat in their usual spot, Amara shared something that had been on her mind for a while. "Leo, I've been thinking. I want to do something more. I want to help others who are going through what I went through." Leo raised his eyebrows like, "What?" "I want to start a club," she said. "A place where students can come and talk. No judgment, no pressure. It's just a safe space. We can share our stories, support each other, and maybe even talk to younger kids about bullying." Leo's eyes lit up. "That's a brilliant idea." They started working on it the next day. Amara went to the school counselor, shared her idea, and asked for permission to start the club. The counselor, who had been deeply moved by Amara's assembly speech, immediately agreed. She even offered to help guide the club in the beginning. Within a week, they had posters up around the school. "Voices Matter, a safe space for all students. Join us every Wednesday after school in room 214. The first meeting had only 6 students, but by the third week, there were more than 20. Some came just to listen. Others came to speak, shared their own painful experiences, bullying, loneliness, anxiety, feeling invisible. There were tears, hugs, and even laughter. As students realized they weren't alone, one girl shared how she used to cry in the bathroom every day. A boy admitted that he had bullied others just to fit in, and now he felt ashamed. Another student said he had considered dropping out because he thought no one cared. Amara listened to every story with patience and love. She didn't try to fix everything. She just made sure no one left the room feeling unheard. The club became a peaceful corner in a school that had once felt cruel. Even teachers noticed the difference. Fewer fights in the hallway. Fewer cruel jokes. Students seemed more thoughtful, more kind. It was like a quiet wave of change had begun. All because one girl had decided to speak. But even with all this progress, something still troubled Amara. Deep inside, she knew Madison was hurting too. She had never said it out loud, but she could see it in her eyes. Behind the smirks and cold words, Madison looked lonely, the kind of lonely Amara had felt in her darkest days. And while Amara had never forgotten what Madison did to her, she also believed that change was possible for anyone. One afternoon, after the Voices Matter Club meeting ended and the other students had left, Amara stayed behind. She sat at her desk in the empty room thinking, and she took out her notebook and wrote a letter. It wasn't long, it's just a few sentences. "I know you don't like me. I know we'll probably never be friends. But I want you to know, I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because I don't want to carry the pain anymore. If you ever feel alone, this club is open to you too. No judgment." Amaruche folded the letter and placed it in a plain white envelope. The next morning, she quietly slipped it into Madison's locker. She didn't expect a reply. For days there was none. But then, something unexpected happened. During the following week's club meeting, the door opened just as they were about. To begin, everyone turned their heads. Madison was standing in the doorway, holding the letter in her hand. The room fell silent. She looked nervous, unsure of herself. Her usual confidence was gone. Her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Amara smiled gently and said, "You can sit anywhere." Madison walked slowly to the back of the room and sat down. She didn't say anything during the meeting, she just listened. When it ended, she stayed behind. Amara walked over to her. They looked at each other for a long moment. "I got your letter," Madison said softly. Amara nodded. "I meant every word." Madison swallowed hard. "I don't know why I did what I did. I guess I was jealous. You're quiet, but people still liked you? You had something I didn't." "I had peace," Amara said, "but I had to fight to find it." Madison looked down. "I've been acting like I'm better than everyone, but truth is, I don't even like myself most days." Amara reached out and gently touched her arm. "You don't have to keep being the person you were yesterday. You can start over. Everyone can." Tears welled up in Madison's eyes. She didn't try to hide them this time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Amara nodded. "That's a good place to begin." From that day, something even more powerful began to grow understanding. Madison didn't suddenly become Amara's best friend, but she changed. She stopped making jokes at others' expense. She apologized to more people. She started joining club meetings more often, and even helped organize a kindness week in school, where students were encouraged to write anonymous notes of encouragement and stick them on lockers. It wasn't easy. Some students still held grudges. Some didn't trust her change at first, but Amara believed in second chances, and slowly, others started to believe too. One day, the principal called Amara into her office. She was nervous at first, unsure why. But the principal simply said, "You've helped change the spirit of this school. I want you to know how proud I am of you." Amara felt her heart swell, not with pride, but with something deeper. Peace, gratitude, joy. At home that evening, she sat with her dad on the couch. He had just returned from a movie shoot and was tired. But when he saw Amara's glow, he smiled. "You look like someone who's done something important," he said. Amara leaned against him and said, "I think I did." Vin Diesel looked at her and said, "You didn't just survive, you healed. And then you helped others heal too." They sat there in silence, father and daughter, no words needed between them. Just the comfort of knowing that love, truth, courage had done something remarkable. Amara had walked into that school as the quiet, new girl who wanted to stay invisible. She became the voice that made others feel seen, and in doing so, she became a hero not in movies, not on screens, but in real life. The final part of Amara's journey began with a quiet morning. The sky was clear, the air was calm, and school felt more peaceful than it ever had before. Amara walked through the gates with a small smile on her face, carrying the same simple backpack and wearing the same simple clothes she always did. But something was different now, not just around her, but inside her. She no longer felt afraid. She no longer felt invisible. She had become the girl who had turned her pain into power, her silence into strength, and her story into something that helped others. The Voices Matter Club had grown beyond what Amara had ever imagined. What had started as a small idea, with Leo under a tree, was now a real part of the school's culture. The club had over 30 members, and every week more students showed interest. They held meetings, shared stories, brought in guest speakers, and even began writing anonymous letters of encouragement that were posted around the school. Other schools heard about it too. One day, a counselor from a nearby middle school reached out and asked Amara if she could visit and speak to their students. Amara felt nervous at first. She had never spoken outside her school. But Leo encouraged her, saying, "Your story doesn't just belong here. It belongs to everyone who needs hope." So, Amara agreed. The day she visited the middle school was something she'd never forget. She stood in front of almost 200 younger students. They looked at her with wide eyes, unsure at first who she was. But when she told them about her story about being bullied, being hurt, and staying silent, they listened carefully. When she shared how she had been adopted by Vin Diesel but kept it secret because she wanted people to see her first, not the fame, they were shocked. But the thing they reacted to most wasn't her father. It was her strength. A girl from the front row stood up with tears in her eyes and said, "I thought I was the only one who felt like that." Another boy walked up to her after the talk and whispered, "Thank you. You saved me today." That day, Amara realized something powerful. She hadn't just changed her school. She had become a voice that could help many. She had gone from a victim to a leader, and that gave her a new purpose. Back at school, things continued to grow. The club organized its first school-wide event, Stand Up Week. Each day focused on a different message: kindness, listening, forgiveness, courage, and unity. The walls were decorated with colorful notes, handmade posters, and student drawings. Even teachers wore shirts that said, "Your voice matters." On the last day of the week, the school held a special assembly. Amara was the main speaker. This time, she wasn't nervous. She walked up to the stage like she belonged there. She looked out at the crowd, not just at the friends she'd made, but also at the students who had once mocked her, laughed at her, or looked away, and then she began. "When I first came to this school, I was scared," she said. "Not because of the classes or the homework, but because I didn't know if I would be accepted. I was quiet. I looked different. And for a long time, people treated me like I didn't matter. Some even tried to make me feel like I didn't deserve to be here." Students sat quietly, hanging on every word. But I didn't give up. Because deep inside me, I knew my story mattered. I knew I had a voice. And one day I used it not just for me, but for everyone who had ever been pushed down or made fun of. She paused, looked at Madison, who was sitting near the front, then continued. "Even the people who hurt me the most chose to forgive them. It's not because it was easy, but because carrying hate only makes the pain heavier. When I let go of that hate, I became free." She looked across the room and said, "Every one of you has the power to change someone's life. Not with big speeches or dramatic moments, but with small actions. A smile, a kind word, standing beside someone when they feel alone. You don't have to be famous, you just have to care." She stepped back from the microphone, and the room burst into applause. Students stood up, some clapped with tears in their eyes. Others simply nodded, as if they finally understood something deep and important. After the assembly, the principal invited Amara to her office. She had a surprise waiting. A large envelope sat on the desk. The principal handed it to her and said, "You should open it." Amara slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from a national student leadership organization. They had heard about Amara's club, her speech, and her work in the school. They were offering her a scholarship and inviting her to speak at a national youth conference in New York City. Her hands trembled as she read the letter. Her eyes filled with tears. "I never imagined this," she whispered. The principal smiled. "You didn't imagine it, you earned it." When Amara told her father that night, he wrapped her in a big hug. Vin Diesel had always been proud of her. But this time, he cried. "You changed lives, kid," he said. "You did something even I haven't done." She laughed and said, "You saved the world in movies." "I just talk to people. That's more powerful," he whispered, as the school year came to a close. Amara felt something she had never felt before. Peace. True peace. Not just in the halls of the school, but in her heart. Madison approached her one day near the lockers. She looked awkward, holding a small book in her hand. "I wrote this," Madison said. "It's my way of making up for everything. It's about ... me and what I did. I want others to know that even people who mess up can change." Amara accepted the book with a gentle smile. "Thank you. Still have a lot to fix," Madison said, "but thanks for giving me a second chance." Amara nodded. We all need one. On the last day of school, Amara walked through the halls one last time as a student there. The girl who had once been the target of cruel jokes was now a symbol of strength and kindness. The girl who used to eat alone now had dozens of friends. The girl who once hid her truth had used it to change lives. Leo met her near the tree where it all started. They sat down like they always had. "Hard to believe it's the last day," he said. Amara smiled. "Feels more like the beginning." "You nervous about the conference in New York?" "Little," she said. "Ready." He looked at her with admiration. "I always knew you were different." "Different is good," she said with a smile, as the sun set that day. Amara stood outside the school gates, looking back one last time, not with sadness, but with pride. She had come into that school unsure and scared, but she was leaving. As someone who had changed the world around her, one honest word at a time, and though many people now knew her as the adopted daughter of a famous man, she had become known for something even more powerful: her courage, her heart, her voice. Amara walked away from the school not just as a student, but as a leader, a healer, and a symbol of what's possible when someone chooses kindness over cruelty, truth over silence, and love over fear. Her story was no longer just hers. It was now a light for others to follow.